Hey guys, this is an extra little lesson, 7.5 and 7.6 kind of together. We're going to talk about theoretical versus experimental probability. So we've already talked about probability, that it's the number of favorable outcomes divided by the total number of possible outcomes. So for example, flipping a coin, if I wanted to know the probability of flipping tails, well, one side is tails, the other side is heads. So there's one side that's a favorable outcome. So tails, there's one side that I want. And then the other side plus it would be our possible outcomes, which would be 2. So it would be one side out of 2 options. So 1 divided by 2. The theoretical is this calculation where we take that one side and we divide it by 2. And that would be the probability of flipping tails or the probability of flipping heads. It's both the same, right? There's one side of each, and there's 2 sides. So 1 divided by 2, which is 50%. So you'd be 50% likely to flip either side. Now, in the real world, there's something called experimental probability, and that's what actually happens. So the experimental probability is what would actually happen if you went and you flipped the coin. So what I'm going to get you guys to do today is you're going to get a coin, and you're going to flip over and over and over 100 times. And you're going to keep track. I'll show you quickly how to do that in a data table that I provide in Google Classroom. So here in Google Classroom, under the Math tab, you'll find the assignment 7.5/7.6, theoretical versus experimental coin flip. And here is a student tracking sheet, a little explanation of what you're doing, and here's the explanation. After you do this, the second one here is where I'm going to paste some things. I'm going to take your data that you get, and I'm going to put it in here. This one you should be able to view, and maybe there's other students that will do theirs first, and you can see what's happening there. But let's just look at this quickly. Here at the top, I have a couple little functions that they are what is calculating it. Please don't type anything in the first 3 columns / 3 rows. So this area, just leave it as is. It'll mess up and you'll have to get me to fix it. And I don't want to do that. Now what has happened here is it's the start of this assignment. Someone's flipped the coin 10 times. So the trials, row 4, someone flipped a coin once and it was heads. So they put a 1 under the heads column, okay? So they put 1 and then they went to the next time. It was either heads or tails. They flipped, oh, it's tails. So they put 1 for tails. 1 for heads for the third trial, then it was tails, then it was heads, tails, tails. Okay, flip another time. It's heads, okay? So put a 1 under the heads column. And what you're going to notice is that this is going to count up 1, okay? It just counted up 1. It's counting how many 1s are in this column. And this one here is counting up how many tails are in this column. And then right below it is the percent. It's the probability percent that it would be heads. It's simply just taking this number and dividing it by the sum of these two numbers. 4 plus 7 is 11. 7 divided by 11 is 63 repeated, okay? What you're going to do is you're going to go down until you get to column 103 or further than that. Why 103? Because there's 3 columns that aren't trials at the top. We're starting on the fourth row. We'll get down to row 103. You're going to go all the way down at least 100 times. You could go further if you want. But what you're going to see as you do trials, these probabilities are going to change, okay? The experimental data is going to change these percents, but I'm hoping we can illustrate something later on Thursday during the devotions / ELA / it'll be math this week time. I'll show you quickly the data that is already in the teacher data sheet. I've done this 100 times. What's interesting is I started and I had 3 heads, which at this point, after 3 trials, it would suggest that it was 100% of the time it was going to be heads, which we know that's not going to be true because there is a tail side to the coin. And sure enough, after 3 more, I was already at 50% that it was tails, 50% heads. And then it kind of went back and forth. And then suddenly it was tails. And the percent of tails went up to 60 something. And the percent of heads went way down. But as I went, there were certain points where it went far more in favor of heads. and far more in favor of heads, and then I finished off with a bunch of tails, and it ended up being pretty close to 50-50. It was 47 to 53. I want to see what we can get with, 26 of us doing it 100 times. So 26, sorry, I have hiccups, 100 times or 2,600 times, and see what this does. My prediction is that it's going to get closer and closer to 50-50. Make your own prediction to maybe, you don't have to do what I'm doing. That's just my prediction because that's what the theoretical is. However, who knows? Maybe the theoretical isn't going to be exactly right. Get a coin, start flipping. I recommend the flat piece of paper or pieces of paper, a stack of books, something like that to flip onto because it kind of stops the coin quickly. Whereas if you flip onto a desk, it bounces for a while and it's hard to see. It'll be quicker if you use a stack of papers. Good luck.